all for being here. Yield back.
Thank the gentleman. We now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Nadler, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Benavides, I was deeply concerned to see the original equipment manufacturers react to the Massachusetts right to repair ballot measure by suspending access to telematic accessories for vehicles sold in the state. How will the recent agreement between repair shops and OEMs affect consumer choice going forward?
Thank you, Congressman.
And are you concerned that we'll end up with a patchwork of state laws governing right to repair?
This agreement with the OEMs is great for us because we finally get to put to rest the fact that we don't have information, right? That we weren't able to get information. So this is an agreement that we've worked on for a while to make sure that we have access to all information, including telematics and anything coming forward. It's in there that the commitment for both parties to support legislation if it needs to get there, but we would like this thing to stand on its own. This agreement has been needed for some time. We stand on the front lines of repairing these vehicles. We need this data, and we have this data. Right now, we have zero repair shops asking us, hey, we don't have the data, we can't get the data, we don't know how to fix it. We don't have that right now, Congressman.
But how will this recent agreement affect consumer choice?
What it will do is make sure that the consumer has the right to take it to a shop that has this access and can repair these vehicles properly. The consumer is, I don't want to say it, the consumer, when they come to my facility, the consumer does not know a lot about the choices that we get and what we have to do behind the scenes. They do not have that. They do not have that understanding. They look to us. They only get in an accident once every 8 years, so they rely on us to have that information. They rely on us to repair those vehicles properly.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Same question. Same question.
In regard to like what impact that will have on repair?
How will the recent agreement between repair shops and OEMs affect consumer choice going forward? And are you concerned that we'll end up with a patchwork of state laws governing the right to repair?
Well, first of all, the agreement, as was mentioned, does not represent the vast majority of aftermarket service providers, and therefore, you know, I think mostly performs a sort of you know, public relations role rather than a functional role in terms of how the aftermarket will work. You know, is there concern about a patchwork of laws? Well, I think for consumers who are, you know, bending and breaking under the cost of high vehicle repairs and struggling to maintain their vehicles, they would rather have a state law than no law at all. So I think, yes, of course, from everybody's perspective, it would be better to have one federal law that applies across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Hartline. Repair advocates argue that Section 1201 prevents non-infringing circumvention of access controls for repair purposes. But Congress contemplated this use when it passed the DMCA in 1998, allowing for a triennial exemption process. Is the exemption process working as intended? And if not, are there actions Congress can take to expand exemptions or make them easier to acquire?
So what's important about the triennial rulemaking is that the proponent of an exemption has to come forward with evidence and demonstrate that there's actually a problem and it relates to a certain class of works, and then they can get a temporary exemption for 3 years. And so it is true that the Copyright Office, well, the Librarian of Congress, has the few rulemakings has said that because using a copyrighted work in a way for repair, maintenance, et cetera, is fair use, that they grant these exemptions. But these exemptions are quite narrow. They do not allow the trafficking of the computer programs that can crack the TPMs. And so it's very narrowly done. And the concern is that if you were to create a permanent exemption that opens things all the way up with access controls, copy controls, and trafficking thereof, is now you're getting to the point of why we even have these TPMs under 1201 in the first place, and that's because they guard against piracy. And so the concern is that you're opening the piracy floodgates, you make these devices less secure, and then content owners are going to be less likely to want to put their content on these devices.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired. I yield back.